A wealthy executive mocked a kind doctor during a flight, but what happened next silenced the crowd and taught everyone a valuable lesson about character and resilience. It was a bustling flight from Atlanta to Seattle, filled with travelers from all walks of life, business professionals, tourists, and families heading for a getaway. Among the passengers was Dr. Elijah Carter, a 42-year-old surgeon with a specialty in pediatric neurosurgery. Though his accomplishments were extraordinary, his humble demeanor often made people overlook his brilliance. Sitting a few seats away was Claudia Richards, a prominent corporate executive in her 50s, known for her blunt attitude and high expectations. She was used to commanding respect in every room she entered and assumed she could extend that same control to those around her. Dr. Carter, dressed in a casual sweater and jeans, quietly settled into his seat with a book in hand. Claudia glanced at him and raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me, are you sure you're in the right section?" she asked, her tone sharp. Elijah smiled politely. "Yes, I'm sure. This is my seat." Claudia gave a dismissive shrug. "Just making sure. You don't usually see—" "Well, never mind," she muttered under her breath. The flight took off without further incident, but an hour in, Claudia's passive-aggressive behavior escalated. She sighed loudly whenever Elijah moved and seemed irritated by his presence. At one point, she turned to him and said, "I hope you're not planning to ask me to trade seats. I specifically paid for extra legroom. I'm perfectly fine here. Thank you," Elijah replied calmly, returning to his book. Their tense interactions drew the attention of Mia, a thoughtful flight attendant who was observing from the aisle. She approached with a warm smile. "Is everything all right here?" she asked, her gaze shifting between the two passengers. "Oh, everything's fine," Claudia replied, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I just didn't expect to have this kind of company in first class." Elijah looked up and locked eyes with Mia. "No problems for me," he said with a calm smile. Mia nodded, sensing the underlying tension, but decided not to press further. However, things took a turn during the meal service. While enjoying her drink, Claudia muttered, just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, "It's surprising who can afford first class these days. Standards really aren't what they used to be." Elijah gently closed his book and turned to face her. "I'm sorry. Were you speaking to me?" Claudia froze, realizing she had crossed the line. "No, I was just making an observation," she stammered. Elijah, maintaining his composure, responded, "I see. For your information, I'm a neurosurgeon. I've dedicated my life to helping children with life-threatening conditions. If that doesn't meet your standards for sitting here, I'm not sure what does." The cabin fell silent as passengers turned their attention to the conversation. Claudia's face flushed, and she looked down at her tray, unable to respond. Moments later, Mia discreetly approached Elijah with an idea. "Dr. Carter, would you mind if we shared a bit about you at the cabin? It might be a good opportunity to celebrate your work." Elijah hesitated but then nodded. "If you think it's appropriate." A short announcement from the captain followed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to have Dr. Elijah Carter on board today, a world-renowned surgeon dedicated to saving children's lives. Let's take a moment to acknowledge his incredible work." The passengers erupted in applause, and Claudia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her earlier remarks now felt heavier than ever. As the plane landed, Claudia avoided eye contact with Elijah, but the story didn't end there. The next day, at a major corporate health conference in Seattle, Claudia was stunned to see Dr. Carter take the stage as the keynote speaker. His speech, filled with inspiring stories of perseverance and hope, left the audience in awe. Claudia sat in the crowd, her earlier behavior replaying in her mind. After the speech, Claudia mustered the courage to approach him. "Dr. Carter," she began hesitantly, "I owe you an apology. My behavior on the flight was inexcusable, and I misjudged you. I hope you can forgive me." Elijah looked at her thoughtfully. "Ms. Richards, I appreciate your apology, but what matters more is how you treat others moving forward. Judging someone based on appearances or assumptions diminishes not them, but you." Claudia nodded, visibly humbled. The incident left an impression on everyone who witnessed it, serving as a powerful reminder of the importance of respect and humility. Dr. Carter didn't just handle the situation with grace. He turned it into a teaching moment, proving that dignity and kindness are the true measures of greatness. As the crowd dispersed after the keynote speech, Dr. Elijah Carter stood near the podium, surrounded by a few attendees eager to speak with him. Each interaction highlighted the impact his words had made, not just on the audience's professional lives, but on their personal perspectives. He answered questions with patience, shared insights, and even posed for a few photos. Yet, amidst the buzz of admiration, one thing was clear. His focus remained steadfast on his mission to inspire, educate, and foster change. Claudia Richards lingered at the back of the room, her usual confidence replaced with an unfamiliar sense of vulnerability. Dr. Carter's words from the flight echoed in her mind, louder now in the context of his speech. She had spent years building her reputation as a formidable leader, someone who commanded respect. Yet her actions had betrayed an underlying bias she hadn't been brave enough to confront until now. Seeing Dr. Carter's poise and strength had forced her to reflect on who she wanted to be. After several minutes of deliberation, Claudia approached him once more, waiting until the crowd around him had thinned. "Dr. Carter," she began, her voice quieter than before. "I'd like to thank you for today. Your speech, it gave me a lot to think about." Elijah turned toward her, his expression neutral but attentive. "I'm glad to hear that, Ms. Richards. Reflection is often the first step toward growth." She hesitated, then added, "I've spent a long time in environments where success is measured by control, by how well you can command attention. But today, I realize that true leadership isn't about dominance. It's about understanding, about respect. I see that now, and I hope to do better." For a moment, Elijah studied her, as if weighing her words. Finally, he nodded. "Growth takes courage, and it's never too late to start. We're all capable of change, Ms. Richards. The question is, will we choose it?" Claudia met his gaze, a mixture of gratitude and resolve in her expression. "I will." The sincerity in her voice left no room for doubt. Elijah extended his hand, and she shook it, a small but symbolic gesture of acknowledgement and closure. For both of them, this moment marked a shift, not just in their interactions but in their paths forward. As the conference concluded, Elijah left with a renewed sense of purpose. The flight incident had been unpleasant, but it had also been a powerful reminder of why he worked so tirelessly to bridge divides and challenge assumptions. His dignity in the face of prejudice had not only taught Claudia a lesson, but had inspired everyone who witnessed his strength. Meanwhile, Claudia returned to her professional world determined to redefine her leadership style. She began advocating for diversity and inclusion in her company, acknowledging her blind spots and inviting others to do the same. Over time, her efforts transformed not only her team, but her legacy. The story of Dr. Elijah Carter and Claudia Richards serves as a reminder of the profound impact of kindness, humility, and courage. By choosing to respond with dignity, Elijah didn't just win a moment. He ignited a ripple effect of change, proving that true greatness lies in lifting others and creating opportunities for understanding.